So I have a question for you. Have you ever had one of these thoughts? Thank God that relationship ended. Losing that job completely changed my life. I would have never started my business otherwise. That experience made me choose myself. Or everything fell apart and somehow my life got better. I'm sure you have. I'm sure you've had this thought or something similar at least at one point in time in your life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, we're going to be diving in and looking at how difficulty actually brings about great change in our life. I know that we have a big month ahead. We're in the midst of a lot of change and turmoil on the planet right now. And I really wanted to sink into not only what the Akashic Records brought through in the Akashic forecast for us in regards to what we're stepping into this month, but also to give you a very encouraging, motivating, and exciting perspective on the difficulty that we are navigating because there is so much, right? Truly, there is so much. And some of the best things in our lives don't happen despite difficult periods. They happen because those periods create conditions that wouldn't exist otherwise. A really good example of this is I remember back in 2008 when, the whole financial crisis hit. And I remember a friend of mine who started a restaurant and everyone was saying, like, you're crazy. You're starting a restaurant at this time. This is going to go terrible for you. Guess what? Because of the conditions that existed and because of the ways in which he had to show up, he created a completely unique type of restaurant that became extremely successful and is still successful to this day in Asheville, North Carolina. In addition, in 2020, when we went into lockdown, I had a friend who had just started a furniture business. And everyone was like, you're crazy. There's no way that this is going to work. There's no way this is going to be successful. Well, guess what? She made a couple of adjustments and turned it into one of the hottest businesses in that area still to this day. So these are just two small examples, but I'm sure that regardless of your life and the choices that you've made, you have also experienced this in one way or another. And as we're stepping into August, and our theme, our overarching theme for August is break you open. I want to break open your mindset when it comes to this so that you can begin thinking about, oh my gosh, how is this actually working for me? Right? In fact, I want you to ask yourself this question. If I believed this could ultimately work in my favor, going through this crazy, insane, chaotic time on the planet where everything is falling apart around us, what might I do differently? And I'm going to ask you that question one more time. If I believed this could ultimately work in my favor, what might I do differently? So today we're going to be diving in. We're going to be talking about this whole perspective, which is truly about being able to look at the difficulty we're navigating and really seeing how much it can improve and expand and really deepen our lives. So if you are brand new to the Soul Driven podcast, welcome, welcome. My name is Anna Hendricks. I am a spiritual guide, teacher, and of course, host of the Soul Driven podcast, where we talk about all things that shape who we are, specifically through the lens of the Akashic Records, through the spiritual realm, but also very grounded in the practical and the rooted in the practical, in the, wow, I don't even know what I was going to say, in the everyday, right? We talk about nervous system, we talk about relationships and fear, and really truly being able to navigate these times, what's happening on this planet. Ultimately, my goal is always to bring you back to yourself, to help you reconnect to who you are so that you can show up in these times, so that you can be the best version of you, the most authentic version of you, because the world needs you. My mantra for this show is when you invest in yourself, the world benefits. And honestly, I think if you go back through the like over 6 years of content, every single piece of it is really geared towards that. So if that is of interest to you, then please subscribe, leave a rating and review if you enjoy this, and hopefully you do. So let's dive in today, really talking about, again, what happens in the midst of difficulty. And we're going to be kind of breaking this down And, one of those really obvious examples is to think about diamonds, right? And how diamonds are forged underneath pressure. Now, this is honest, like, I'm not a fan of diamonds. I don't wear diamonds. I honestly could care less about diamonds unless they're like the moissanite. I think that's what it's called. Diamonds, the ones from like outer space. Those are so freaking cool and beautiful. Um, Getting sidetracked, but nonetheless, you've all heard this, and it's really, really true. When we begin understanding how much of a blessing challenging times can be, it really enables us to not only change our perspective, but to slip into a place where we can thrive in that. And what I mean by that specifically is not just like, oh, hey, I can make it through and, come out better on the other end. I'm talking about where you can turn what you have into something spectacular, where you can truly flip that script. Okay. And before we dive into that, just real quick, I have a couple of announcements for you. First and foremost, this Thursday, every first Thursday of the month, I host an Akashic channeling circle. This is a complimentary event. Come be with me in the Akashic Records. Bring your questions. I will be opening up the Akashic Records and channeling for attendees. Now, I only will be channeling about general questions. I do not do personal questions in this event. However, it always ends up being just a spectacularly beautiful time. So come join, enjoy the Akashic Records, get to see me channel, bring questions about August, about the economy, about whatever it is that you're curious about, and we'll dive into it together. Again, it's always the first Thursday of the month. So this month it's on the 6th of August, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the only thing that you need to do in order to attend is to join my email list prior to the 6th, because it goes out Thursday morning and everyone on the Thursday morning email gets that Zoom link. Okay. Um, Second, on the 27th of August, I am hosting an Akashic Guidance Circle. Now, this is a circle. It's limited to 6 seats because I am opening up the Akashic Records for each individual who joins, and we'll be channeling for them. This is always such a gorgeous time to come together. And if you have been needing some guidance in your life, if you're like brand new to the Akasha and you want to experience it, if maybe you just need like a little bit of a nudge or direction instead of a whole reading, then this is a great way to do that and to come together. The third thing I want to share with you is that my 10-week deep dive Access Your Akashic Soul course, which is learning all about the Akashic Records, how to work within them, how to read for others, in addition, how to do energy healing through my own modality, Akashic Restoration sessions. We are getting started the first week of October. What? This is going to be my 3rd cohort. I'm so excited about it. And promotions are ramping up. So if this is of interest to you, make sure to check out the landing page. Of course, all links are below. And join the waiting list, because this also is limited to 15 seats. I want to ensure that every single person who attends really gets personalized attention. And once you kind of read through the landing page, you'll understand why, because it is very hands-on. There's lots of practice. It's very engaging. I've got all sorts of cool elements, guest teachers. Like it's a thing. It's a whole event, and it's amazing. And I can't wait to host this next cohort. All right. So again, all the links are below. If you want to schedule an Akashic reading with me as well, you can do that. All the things below. All right. So again, let's kind of dive in, looking at this from a different perspective. And I want to read this to you again because I really loved how I kind of put this together. Some of the best things in our lives don't happen despite difficult periods. They happen because those periods create conditions that wouldn't otherwise exist. And I'm going to say that one more time, just because honestly, I think it's so powerful, especially as we think about break you open and the theme that we're stepping into in August. Okay. Some of the best things in our lives don't happen despite difficult periods. They happen because those periods create conditions that wouldn't otherwise exist. All right. So, first and foremost, I think it's, kind of going through my different sort of points here. Number one, We misunderstand difficult times so quickly, right? We have this like propensity, this like want to be comfortable, this like want to do the thing, but we misunderstand difficult times. And we misunderstand like even hearing that we're going to be going through a difficult time. We want to run in the other direction. We don't want to have anything to do it, right? We tend to immediately label difficult as bad, right? Versus like, easy equals good. So bad equals hard or hard equals bad. Don't let me get myself confused. I am slightly dyslexic. We'll be here all day, right? But we can't possibly know what an experience is creating while we're inside of it. And that's so important to remember. Whenever you're going through a difficult time or you've received difficult news, it's easy to get swept up in the middle of it. And I've done this numerous times. I am a third line in human design. And third lines in human designs, like we really are trailblazers in that we fail monumentally through life. And then we get to figure it out and find our way through. And then we get to come and share it with you all. Right. And that's where a lot of the wisdom that I have and that I talk about on this show comes from, are all the many, many misplaced, things that I've done, said, whole nine yards, right? And because I have been forged by fire, as our July Akashic theme was throughout my entire life, I really have, especially in my adulthood and over the past couple of years, really come to see how crucial, how important, how valuable difficult periods are. But I also know that it's hard to see it while we're going through it. I went through a very, very difficult breakup not too long ago. And I have to tell you that as I was navigating all of the emotions and all of the things that were coming to the surface, I knew in my heart, like, okay, this is happening for my benefit. This is happening for a reason. But right now, I am a train wreck and I am falling apart and I am heartbroken and I'm angry and I'm all of these things. I understood that we were in, that I was in process and I had to go through that. So, while we're in the midst of difficulty, and certainly right now on the planet, as we kind of look out around, it's hard to remember that, wait a minute, like it is happening for our benefit. It is happening for a good reason. And just to kind of shift that perspective, right? Number two, comfort preserves, difficulty disrupts, right? So when life is comfortable, there's little incentive to question our lives, relationships, beliefs, systems, habits, right? But difficulty interrupts what we've accepted as normal. And I have to tell you, this is like almost a bit of a guiding light in my life, especially as an entrepreneur. If you're a business owner, then comfort is your number one enemy, and it is so insidious. It comes in like any form. Like maybe you make a whole lot of money one month, and so like you take your foot off the pedal, like without even realizing it, without even thinking about it, because you're like, I can breathe. Oh, I'm good. Or let's say you've got like a full year and rocking things out left and right, and so you take your pedal off the wheel without even thinking about it because things have been going so well. Or perhaps, right, like in marriage and relationship, things go so well. So you start taking the person for granted. You know what I'm saying? It happens easily. And, it's not that that's necessarily bad, but it does really numb our ability to be aware of what's going on, to be like at the helm, if you will, of life in general. And life wants us to be alive. It wants us to be engaged. It wants us to be making decisions and doing things, right? And that doesn't happen when we're just hanging out in comfort. Whenever I think of the word like comfortable or getting comfortable, I literally think about laying out on the couch. And when I'm laying on the couch, like, do not mess with me. Don't ask me to do something. Don't ask me to, you know what I'm saying? Like, I want to lay on the couch because I don't just lay on the couch. But if I'm laying on the couch, then I want to be cozy. I want to be comfortable and I do not want to be messed with. And that's kind of similar, right? But when difficulty comes along, man, does it push us into action. We become sharp all of a sudden. We become creative all of a sudden. We start finding solutions in places we didn't even look before. we become a completely different version of ourselves. And, speaking of business, I can think about when I first started my very first business, it was in marketing. I had no idea what I was going to do. I had just been fired. And it was one of those inevitable things like, okay, I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur. I thought I would get to make that decision. Clearly, I'm just going to be pushed into it because ultimately I decided, okay, so I could go work for someone who doesn't really invest in me and could like kick me out at any moment, or I can invest in myself and I can believe in myself. And I'll never stop doing that. And so I can work as hard as I want, or I can work as little I want. You know what I'm saying? And so I decided to go for it. But I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to like generate clients and stuff like that. So the difficulty of that initial period, I mean, I was like putting up ads on Craigslist back when Craigslist was like a huge thing. I was literally going door to door with businesses and like at businesses with brochures. I was having like lunch with like rando people. I remember like meeting this girl who heard that I did marketing, heard me talking about it in a store. She was like, "Oh my gosh, I would love to talk to you about marketing." And so I booked this lunch with her. And guess what? She started selling me her like MLM crap, like the whole lunch. I was like, "What happened?" And I had to kind of laugh because I was like, wow, she was smooth. But you know what I'm saying? Like that was difficulty for me because of course I saw the number in my bank account going down, 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 down. And man, did that kick me into gear. Man, did that motivate me, right? Difficulty brings about oftentimes like our most incredible attributes. And again, if you really think about it, it's like going back to my heartbreak whenever like I honestly there's a part of me, all right, and it's not sadistic, but there is a part of me that enjoys the heartbreak process because it splits me open in such a way. Life feels so real in those moments. I'm so deeply connected with myself and my heart and my emotions, and it's like I'm raw and vulnerable, and there's something about it that's just pretty incredible. And maybe you know what I'm talking about, maybe you don't. Maybe you're like, "She's crazy," and that's understandable, but the point just being is that I love being able to see the side of myself because I only get to see it when I am that broken, when I'm going through that much pain and that much difficulty. Now I'll never induce that upon myself willingly, right? But point just being is that it really does interrupt our our kind of typical way of navigating through life, right? Number 3, pressure reveals what was already there. So difficult times can expose weaknesses, truths, desires, relationships, broken systems, right? And of course ourselves. But the difficulty doesn't necessarily have to create the problem. Oftentimes it just makes it visible. And I think that, where we really see this, right, is again in the collective. I feel like that's easiest. And because I talked about pressure so much in the Akashic forecast episode, I want to reiterate that here, right? That pressure really reveals where we're at and it reveals what's really there. Because of course, whenever things start getting tough, we start being able to see things clearly, which is exactly what's taking place on the planet right now in all kinds of different ways. We're realizing like, oh, the healthcare system, like just kind of fell apart. Wow, is this really serving us? Wow, okay, like even if we could put it back together, is that actually what we want? Do we actually want this version of healthcare? Or do we want a better one? There's so many things that come up. And in our everyday lives, when things get difficult, and you can think about this like in a relationship, right? When things get difficult, you get to see exactly where your relationship is at. So, my partner and I, we have such a blast together. We're very similar. We're big goofballs. We're loud. And, like, if I start goofing off and dancing in the grocery store, like, he totally just mimics me immediately. We just feed off of each other. We have no issue getting along. Very, very easy to get along. And so when we have like arguments or something like that in our relationship, it's always like kind of jolting to us because, first of all, we get along so well and we get lost in that comfort, right? Like I was just talking about. And so we're not really looking at like, okay, this is really good, but also there are these other things that need to be seen, need to be talked about, need to be clarified or worked through, or whatever the case may be. You know what I'm saying? And so that difficulty, that pressure can really be helpful, because then it's like, oh, there's actually this part of our relationship that has been calling for our attention, but we've just been partying over here and having such a great time that we completely missed it, right? Number 4, necessity makes us creative. And I, of course, spoken to this just a moment ago, right? So some of humanity's greatest innovations came from constraint. When the old solutions stopped working, we're forced to imagine something we wouldn't have considered beforehand. And this is something that you can really look and see with children. I remember when my nephews were super young, I decided very quickly, like, I am not buying them any toys, just none, because not only would they get hand me downs from their cousins who are, a couple years older, but then, of course, my brother and sister in law just like spoiled the crap out of them, on holidays and whatnot. And there were so many toys. And you would see, like my first nephew, because they're 5 years apart, so there was some space where my first nephew was alone, and he would come out for Christmas and he'd be so excited and he'd be like playing with all these toys, and then he would just kind of collapse and get exhausted because there's so many options, right? And I remember when I first moved to Costa Rica, and I was living with a Costa Rican family at the time. It was monsoon season, and the entire family was sharing one umbrella. And it was like a family of 6, I believe, which just blew my mind. Here I am, the American, showing up with like all my gear, my cell phone, my iPod, my like all my stuff, my computer, like all my stuff, right? And like here, they're sharing one umbrella. But what blew me away is their youngest, who was a toddler, the only toys that he had were like nuts and bolts. And the things that he would do with these toys was just like, oh my gosh. I'm sure that he like grew up to, or is growing up to be like an engineer or something of that nature. Absolutely brilliant. You know what I'm saying? And I've noticed that in my own life. When I only have so much to work with, it's like I become so creative. When I'm pushed within the constraints, it's like I start seeing things outside the box. Again, I for me to go door to door with brochures, like that was pretty insane. But I had to make money and I had to figure it out. And so it was like I talked to someone and they had this product, and it was like for business owners. And I was like, okay, this is cool. Maybe I can sell this. And so I just tried it. I just went for it. And I am shy. Okay. So I know that I come across as all the things, but I'm here recording by myself, right? And also I love recording and doing this. So I'm in my best mood. But if I'm having to walk into someone else's space and sell to them, because I don't like that when people do that to me. So it's really, really hard for me to do things that I don't like. But again, I had to make money. I had to figure it out. And I eventually did. That was definitely not the way. And that was definitely not the product. But you get creative. You try things that are outside your box. And so you're able to come up with new solutions. And we're going to be seeing that left, right, and center. I just was talking about healthcare, and it was so wild. I actually made a little video on this because as soon as, the votes didn't go through to continue healthcare in the same way that it had been running here in the United States, all of a sudden these businesses started popping up. These doctors' offices where you could pay like a monthly, flat fee and get like visits and all these things involved. And we're going to see more and more and more of that. There are solutions to literally everything on the planet. And, I think really all you have to do is like kind of look out into the world and you start seeing these. And all of this creativity is coming about because, first of all, we need solutions, but also because there's constraints in place, difficulty in place, right? Number 5, loss creates space. Wow. Give me a second here. So endings, collapses, things falling apart create openings, right? We understandably focus on what's disappearing without realizing simultaneously we are gaining space for something else. And probably one of the easiest places to look at this for an example is relationship, right? Romantic relationships. I have always been of the mindset that, you know what? If this one doesn't work, that just means there's something even better for me. And that has always been the case. Every relationship that I've ever had was a step up from the one prior, right? And I know that definitely from a business standpoint, if I lost a client, it was simply because there was one even better for me coming in. If a project didn't work out, that was because there was actually something even better. If I went to create something and couldn't create it, that was because it wasn't meant to be created like that. It was meant to be created like that. Like this is how life is. And we take things so personally. We get so upset about it, right? Because we get really focused. Rejection is like one of the biggest wounds that I'm navigating in this lifetime. And someone just shared with me that, they had kind of made different plans on something that we'd been working on together. And I had to sit with that for a minute because it hit me right in the chest and it felt very personal and it felt like, oh, there's something wrong with you on it. But I also started telling myself immediately, it was like, okay, I know I'm taking this personally because this is what I do. And that just means there's something even better. That just means there's something even better. And I just kept telling myself that. And it took me a couple of days because I'm human and I was feeling it. But guess what? I found an even better solution, like an even better solution that wouldn't even have come about if this other person wouldn't have changed their plans. So in the midst of the things that we're losing right now, as we're looking out of the collective, or perhaps what you're losing in your own personal life, maybe it's a job, maybe it is a relationship, whatever the case may be, I want to encourage you to remember that through this space, something even better is coming in, right? Number 6, difficulty introduces you to yourself. And again, this is something I was just kind of talking about with the heartbreak and why I love this. Well, I should say I love this because I don't love heartbreak. And yet it's such a sacred, incredibly powerful, powerful time. So, you know, the thing is that difficulty helps you discover capacities, capabilities that you didn't even know you had, introduces you to parts of yourself that maybe you forgot, got disconnected from, or haven't even met yet. I remember one heartbreak in particular when we broke up. And I think I spent just like a day or two being upset about it. And then I realized, and I was like, wait, what am I doing? I've been in this relationship longer than I should have. Like, it wasn't going in the direction I wanted it to. We didn't ultimately want the same things. And so, truly, I meant to be grateful in this, and I realized that through that relationship, I had. I had been getting further and further away from myself in the midst of it without even realizing it. And so not only was it a blessing that like we broke up, but then also too, I got to like start pulling, myself back to me in the midst of that. Right. So when we go through difficulties, you like more than likely you're going to meet parts of yourself like your courage, your boundaries, your resilience, your leadership, your discernment, your creativity, your self-trust, right? You meet versions of yourself that comfort never allowed space for, right? Because comfort kind of like, again, comfort to me, like I always think about sitting on the couch. When I'm sitting on the couch, like it's amazing. I love it. But also, this is not a place where I'm creative. This is not a place where I'm like making myself better or living. I'm simply relaxing. I'm in comfort, you know? And comfort, when we live in comfort, when everything's good in life, we aren't required to meet these aspects of ourselves. And, like as a collective right now, as things are unearthing and as things are just falling apart, we are having to find our resilience. We're having to find our courage to speak out. we're having to find those aspects of ourselves that perhaps we haven't even been working with because life has been relatively easy, right? Number 7, the breakdown can become the beginning. And this is really something that, again, as we're like moving into August and really navigating August, I want you to really think about, right? Because this is very much about the theme and what break you down can be. I had a couple of people actually who, just a very too few, who kind of were irritated with me with my monthly forecast. They were like, this is very negative. And I was just thinking, well, okay. And also, if that's your perspective, all right, that's, that's on you. That's not on me. That's not what I bring forward for you. I bring forward truth for you. I bring forward exactly what the Akasha shares with us. And I can't control how you're going to take a theme. That's the way it is, right? But it's also your mindset, you know? If systems in our world, if things around us are cracking open, that means that there is an opportunity to build things differently. And ultimately, that is what the Akasha has been talking about this entire year, every single month, with every single forecast in one way or another, letting us know the reason that everything's falling apart is so that it can be built back together, built back differently, built back better, right? So the exciting question is, what could we create now that wasn't possible before? And this is a question that we're going to have to come back to again and again and again and again as we are kind of moving forward and into the collective, right? Because there are so many things. And there's just a couple more small points that I want to emphasize with you. First and foremost, difficulty forces decisions we've been avoiding, right? Because sometimes we know that something isn't working. Sometimes we know it for years, like the relationship I was talking about. I knew it wasn't working. I knew weren't going in the right direction. And all of a sudden we hit like a really rough point, which is eventually what led to us breaking up and like, honestly, like being honest with each other. But we're comfortable. He was a nice guy. We had a lot of fun together. Like there were really good things about the relationship, but it didn't have a future. And that difficulty made us make a decision, right? So eventually life makes staying the same more painful than changing. And I have to tell you, I see this almost nonstop with my clients, almost nonstop, and it's obviously, or not obviously, it's usually what leads to our big life/spiritual awakenings where we realize like, whoa, okay, someone passed away, a marriage ended, a career fell apart, an addiction, evolved, like something took place where we realized like, wow, we can't keep going this road, right? So that difficulty actually forced a decision that we were avoiding, again, in comfort. Second one here, constraint clarifies what actually matters. And I love this one, right? So when resources, energy, money, time, things become limited, our priorities become clear, right? Excess gives us endless option. Create asks, what do I actually value? And again, this just goes back to like what I saw with my little nephew, or you can just think about going into the grocery store. Like if you're just going to the grocery store to pick out cereal, oh my gosh, there's like 80 different brands of cereal these days. Like I don't walk down the cereal aisle because I don't eat cereal. But if I did, are you kidding me? That would be such an overwhelming experience for me to actually try and pick out freaking cereal. Why? Because there's tons and tons of types of cereal, right? But when there's just a couple of whatever, it helps me to really see clearly what I want. And it's the same thing in life. It's the same thing in the midst of difficulty, right? When constraints do step into place, we start realizing what's really important. Through the pandemic, so many of us realize like, oh my gosh, I love like being at home with my partner more instead of being out all the time, or I love being with my kids, or I hate my job, or whatever the case may be, right? It lets us know. Number 3, collective hardship can reconnect us. And this is very much about, again, what is taking place in the collective right now. Our empathy towards one another has been growing at a steady pace since the pandemic took off. And, we saw this in Minnesota when ice was really just wreaking havoc in that area, how people came together, how neighbors began helping neighbors, how people organized and got active, right? And the community just really wrapped around them. And we're seeing this in other areas of the country, but I think we all saw what took place in Minnesota, and it was amazing, to say the least. Is it in Minneapolis? Y'all, I always get my words mixed up, so please show me grace here. Is it Minneapolis? Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm second guessing everything in my brain now. But you know what I'm talking about, right? Number 4, hard times destroy illusions. And this is especially relevant right now, right? Because seeing something clearly can be incredibly painful, but once we've seen it, we can start making a different decision. And then last but not least, we don't know what's being created yet. And this is truly something that I really want you to lean into and to wrap your hope around, okay? Because when difficult things happen, it's important for us to experience it fully, but also to remain curious and to begin asking ourselves these questions, right? So this is all very much tied into the energies that we're going to be moving through in August and beyond. Because as I shared in the Akashic forecast, I truly believe that this is kind of, as we're stepping into August, this is kind of kicking off, I think, one of the most difficult, if not one of the top most difficult years that we are going to be traversing through this whole evolution that we're going through as a society, especially here within the United States. I can't speak into what's happening in other countries, but certainly outside or sorry, certainly inside the United States, right? So we aren't just watching an old world fall apart. We're living through the conditions that make something else entirely possible. And again, this is what happens when difficulty shows up for us. July forged us by fire. August is breaking us open. But perhaps what's coming through that opening is something we literally couldn't access while everything else was intact. So I hope that today's episode really helps you to kind of see things from a different perspective, to look at it uniquely, and to start kind of shifting things around for yourself. Because even in the midst of fire and chaos and violence, there is also equally, if not more, opportunity for love and compassion and growth and expansion and manifestation and all of the incredible, incredible things that we can think about. And that's where I want us to be. And that's really where I want you to spend your time, thinking about the best of what can come through this space. Because ultimately, as you've heard me say so many times, we are creating this next step for ourselves. And in the midst of that creation, we've got to be mindful of where our mind's going and where we're putting our focus, our attention, our time. And so why not come together and be like, okay, what can we create on the other side of this? What new world are we imagining? As these systems are falling apart, what would the greatest scenario be for us? What is possible? So I just want to read this sort of, I guess, thesis statement back to you one last time. Some of the best things in our lives don't happen despite difficult periods. They happen because those periods create conditions that wouldn't otherwise exist. We're creating brand new things right now, and it's hard and it sucks, and it's sometimes too much. And I'm with you in all of that. But my beautiful soul, I'm also dreaming into tomorrow, and I'm thinking about what can be. And I'm offering up my gratitude as often as I can, because there is still so much here for us to be thankful about and to dream into. So, thank you for being here, sharing your time with me. Please share this episode with someone who could benefit from it. I'd love to hear how it resonates with you. Leave a rating, review, subscribe, come join, access your Akashic Soul, the waiting list. All the links and stuff will be down tomorrow. And of course, hello, the monthly Akashic channeling circle. I would love to have you this Thursday. So sending you so much love. Be kind to yourself. And don't forget, when we invest in the world, we invest in ourselves, the world benefits. Until next time.